As one tries to study his own uh, family history and reflecting on those who went uh, before us, one must look at history very critically. Until more recently, of course, I left my motherland country in 1999, and I was always curious to know about uh, identity and history of people that I interacted with. I attended an international school where there was a diversity of stories and culture and even religion. So, reflecting back um, uh, years on, almost 2 decades on after I left the motherland continent, the stories I've collected of people, people's journey, indeed the stories that I've been able uh, to to hear from new connection, a new family connection, made me even more passionate about history. From school and secondary school, I was always passionate about history. In fact, I always did well in history, and I always enjoyed interacting with my history teachers from École Indépendante to Lycée SOS Herman Miner. I absolutely enjoyed hearing the stories and history of different civilizations. Of course, I always assumed that I knew everything about my personal family history, but only to find out that there was a lot of history I was not aware of. In fact, some of the people that I even interacted with over the years, I was not aware that somewhere along my family tree we were connected to those cultures and different faiths. So, checking the different results, of course, that I've been able to access from different genealogists and geneticists and archaeology, um, I am absolutely fascinated among those stories to discover my uh, heritage of the modern nation of Sudan of today. It's incredibly full of rich stories and culture and um, innovation, architecture that um, one can only hope that as a continent that we can put our differences aside and start rebuilding that ancient glory that we used to have as a continent. In fact, I actually believe that the continent of Africa should be the place that all human beings call the promised land. The promised land in terms of maximizing your potential, no matter your color uh, uh, of the skin, your faith, your religious belief, your social class. I strongly believe that the African continent ought to be the continent that unites all of us. But it must be done with respect and it must be done to really empower everyone, particularly those who live on the African continent. So, as a tribute to this heritage of Sudan that I've discovered, I decided to put together a little booklet um, to sort of reflect on that rich history sadly, of a nation under conflict as we speak. My prayer is that this land of Sudan can find its glory. In fact, that it can be better than what it used to be under military dictatorship and militia control. I've met so many people from Sudan and they embody uh, the decency of mixed heritage. So the Arab world and also the African culture heritage. So I hope you'll be able to enjoy this children's book that I put together, hopefully to serve as a manual for anyone interested in history, particularly to those who are born outside of the African continent, but also, of course, the children of the African continent. Uh, and I hope that one day we can all help Sudan to stop the conflict, but to also rebuild the land of the ancestors. I thank you.
The architect of peace. The city of Soba, jewel of the kingdom of Alodia, hummed with 1,000 foreign tongues. To Kyra, newly arrived from the military schools of Old Dongola, it felt too loud, too open. She stood on the edge of the market, the sun glinting off the gold embroidery of her Mercurian tunic, her leather quiver holding arrows rumored to be pupil smiters. Her mission was simple: observe the stability of the southern kingdom. Makuria had peace through the Bakht Treaty, a peace forged in the blood of archers at Dongola's walls. But here, the only fortifications Kyra saw were the high walls of merchant warehouses, not stone bastions. A young merchant, Faraj, noticed her rigid stance. He was an apprentice to a spice trader, fluent in Greek, Arabic, and Old Nubian. He saw not a soldier, but a curiosity, a perfectly still point in the city's restless flow. "Welcome to Soba, stranger," he said, his hands holding a small, heavy pouch of frankincense. "This city is built on trust, not stone. You look like you rely on the latter." Kyra did not smile. "Stone lasts," she replied. "Trust crumbles." Faraj chuckled, a sound like dried palm leaves rustling, perhaps. But trade is the blood that keeps Alodia's heart beating. We exchange goods, yes, but also ideas, technologies, and intentions. Our open gates mean fewer enemies try to knock them down. "Your openness is a weakness," Kyra insisted, following him past a grand red brick church. Mukuria's Bakht Treaty was won with arrows aimed at the eyes of our invaders. Our strength is our isolation. We kept the ancient world alive. Faraj stopped by a fountain, dipping his hand in the cool water, and we keep the world now alive. That water flows from the heart of the kingdom to merchants from the Red Sea, the Indian Ocean, and the desert's edge. If we refuse to drink from the same cup, how will we know if they poison it? That evening, Kyra watched Faraj carefully cataloging a shipment of silks and spices. He worked with the same focus and precision she used to notch an arrow. He was aiming for stability too, just using contracts instead of crossbows. "My people call your archers pupil smiters," Faraj murmured without looking up. "The name holds fear, And fear is costly. We prefer names that bring gold. The hospitable, the prosperous. Both names demand discipline, Kyra. One to keep people out, the other to manage their coming and going. Kyra finally relaxed her stance, the first time in weeks. Perhaps, she conceded, watching the light catch on the silk. Perhaps the strength of a kingdom is not the wall it builds, but the road it paves. She still carried her arrows, but now she carried a new question too.
I hope that we can honor the culture, the faith that uh, is part of the Sudanese history and story. But most importantly, I hope that might does not have to be the language we use to rebuild Sudan. My prayer for the children, sons, and daughters of Sudan is that they will find the courage and humility to go back to the text of their faith and find a scripture that urges them to silence violence and guns. And I hope that in that same scripture, there will be one that inspires to rebuild Sudan to the glory it ought to be. When I first visited a mosque, I learned about the principle of saving one life is like saving the whole of humanity. When I was hosted by a Sudanese family uh, in this city, I saw the value of cultural Sudan. So let's all work together to make sure and ensure that first Sudan heals and that we all get together to build a greater future for all sons and daughters of Sudan.